The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls was absolutely critical. It was really a gift of God, actually, when you think of it. Because previous to those discoveries, the oldest manuscripts of the Old Testament dated to 800 A.D.
The Qumran community was a number of miles out of Jerusalem, near the Dead Sea. There were people called the Essenes. They were very devout people, committed to the scriptures, and lived kind of a separated life. They copied scriptures. They had a lot of the Old Testament scrolls, no New Testament because it was before the time of Christ. And Rome invaded the land, and they were going from city to city and killing thousands. And the Essenes knew they had to leave or they'd all be killed. And they couldn't take their scriptures with them. So they climbed up into many open caves in the cliffs around the Dead Sea. And they placed their scriptures in these caves, and then they camouflaged the front where it looked just like it was normal dirt. They would pile the dirt up, and like today we'd use cement blocks and things like that. They camouflaged it all, and it remained there for 2,000 years. And then the winds and everything else, little by little, started to erode the camouflage. And there were two Bedouin shepherds. One was named Mohammed. They were just kids. And they were there, and like kids, they were throwing stones. And they were throwing a stone up, and it didn't come back. And it kind of heard like a clink. And they thought, oh, it's probably an evil spirit or something. So they took off. Well, later they started thinking, well, no, maybe there was a treasure there in their minds. So they went back and they climbed up. Well, the stone had gone through a hole that the wind had eroded out of the camouflage. And it went through and it hit a clay jar that had some scrolls in it from the Old Testament.
Suddenly, we had copies of the Old Testament that were only a few hundred years removed from the time of writing, not more than a millennia removed. So as they laid down the Dead Sea Scrolls, like the copy of Isaiah, alongside the youngest copies that we had, among the scholarly world, there was a little bit of trepidation. Would there be changes? And what is the amazing thing that is a testimony to the preservation of God's Word is that not only the content had been preserved, the words had been preserved. In many cases, what are called diacritical marks, even the punctuation, had been preserved.
Perhaps the most famous scroll is the scroll of Isaiah. And so Isaiah has been very carefully studied by scholars, and they find out that it corresponds to our Isaiah in great detail. Now, there are some differences because, there may be word spellings, maybe there's additional punctuation, and so forth. But now we know that we have a reliable text that goes back prior to the time of Jesus, when the Essenes lived, perhaps 150 B.C., which shows how old those manuscripts now are.